terms of, say, like, I'm a big person when it comes to analogy. I'll give you a simple example. When I am trying to build any kind of a house, right, the foundation is a core component of it. And when I try to do any kind of digital transformation kind of initiatives, the core foundation is the data on which you build your digital transformation journey. Because at the end of the day, if you're not digital enough, there's nothing to transform for you in the long run. Right? So let's quickly get into what data is. This is just a snippet of data as how the world consumes it. You might see a lot of numbers next to data in terms of how much data gets consumed in a day, in a year, and so on. But one key aspect that I want you to look or take back to the slide is, out of all the data that we are producing, only 8% of it is consumable data. When I say consumable, right, you can consume it and make some kind of insights or analytics out of it. So my focus for today's talk is more in terms of how has data engineering as a principle being looked at from consuming more data out of all the data that you currently produce and enable for your downstream systems, take it for analytics, take it for machine learning, take it for data science, or for your process automation. Yeah? Digital transformation. So this is a playbook which is pretty much general, and I'm pretty sure most of you are familiar with it. But I'll touch for like 2-3 minutes on this. Wherein when it comes to digital transformation, right, there are two aspects for any digital transformation journey. One is you need to have what you call as an operating model that needs to change when you're trying to transform your businesses. The other component is you need to uplift your underlying technology and data itself that's supporting the transformation field. So from an operating model standpoint, why any organization would go for a digital transformation, right? It's two things. Organizations don't want to do anything fancy. All they care about is what's the underlying dollar impact. Are you to make money for an organization or you save money for the organization? That's the underlying principle as to why any digital transformation initiative is kicked off in the organization. I'm someone who works within the businesses, but focusing more on the data and the technology aspect of it. For me, the first component, which is the business centricity, is a critical aspect of it. Why are you doing any kind of transformation? How is it going to help your business? Is it going to help you transform it? If yes, how is it going to transform? How is it going to translate for you in the business? Not just for business and for the clients who are actually part of the business also, right? So that's where business and customer centricity comes in handy for us. Next is more in terms of when you're trying to transform a business, what's the kind of business development that's going to happen when you're trying to transform it? Finally, like most of the speakers alluded, it's a cultural shift when you're trying to do a digital transformation journey. You just need not put data and operating model along with it. It's the people who end up doing your digital transformation who also has to be involved. If the cultural aspect doesn't fit right, your digital transformation might not be as successful as you might think that it should have been. Right? So that's the operating model. Next on the technology and data. Given we're talking about data engineering, the box I've highlighted, which is the data and cloud, that's what we'll talk about in the successive slides. The other aspects, along with data and cloud, before we move on to the next slide, is more in terms of when you have any kind of a new product out there, say that you might be only a B2B kind of a business, you might want to go digital. It could be through your cloud, or it could be through your mobile, it could be through online. First comes your digital marketing, where you have to do your marketing for the new tools and channels that you're opening up. That's going to need a lot of effort. Next is the process engineering aspect of it. When you have any kind of a digital transformation initiative, the underlying processes that existed before your transformation might not be relevant anymore. So that needs to also go a change, where you have process to be re-engineered, like I would call it, which is a separate practice in a lot of firms in the current scenario. And the last but not the least, the new technologies that you might end up bringing along your digital transformation journey. It could be with your apps, it could be with IoT, you name it, right? So that's where the whole gamut comes in from a digital transformation. If you look at the overall gamut, there's two things. One is you have to change your operating model. You also have to look at how you uplift your technology and data that's supporting your digital transformation. And this is a pretty familiar slide for most of you in the last 1.5 day session that we have gone through, more in terms of what I would call it as a definition or a meaning of digital transformation in my context, or what I have seen it being converting to. Data engineering, in plain hindsight, a lot of people spoke about architectures, pipelines, and so on. For me, it's all about what kind of quality data that you get as an outcome from your digital transformation journey through data engineering. Data engineering as a pillar, I would call them just as someone who would be producing data for you. The data has to be consumable. It has to be consumable for your downstream systems, for your analytics, your data science teams, or even for people who just want to play with the data that's being cleaned up so that they can build their own insights and analytics on top of it. So that's where the whole value chain of data engineering comes in. And the quality aspect is where a lot of emphasis has been put forth, where you would say, hey, look, we are building a data engineering team. It's not output based, where you say, hey, look, a data engineering team's primary job is to provide data as such. Yes, that's given. But what kind of data do you end up giving to your downstream system so that it's easily consumable? Where you don't have to do any kind of transformation on top of it, apart from the business logics that need to go in for the data to be useful from an analytics or a data science standpoint, right? So that's where it comes in handy. Data engineering wise, few aspects that I've put forth, or in terms of cleaning, you have a lot of tools out there, I will not go deep into it. One aspect that I would like to touch upon when you're talking about data engineering, which is a critical component, is your data governance and management. Because at the end of the day, we have a lot of architectures out there. You have your data lakes, you have your data meshes, which is a range in a lot of organizations, including mine, which I can't talk more. One aspect that comes in handy is how do you govern the data that you're producing? Who has an oversight on top of it? Who's building the governance frameworks for those data? And how are you effectively managing those data pipelines so that the data that you end up consuming for your downstream, once you automate everything from your analytics to your process engineering, it works as a free flow, completely automated, right? So that's where governance and management comes in handy, which ends up becoming a separate topic in itself, which I might not cover today in detail, but I'll touch upon in the next few slides on the governance and management aspects of it. End-user-driven data engineering or digital transformation, like I said, it's supposed three things: process engineering, analytics, EDA, which is the exploratory data analysis, and more in terms of your reporting and analytics, which is given, right? So this is what it more or less covers. When it comes to digital transformation, two aspects comes in handy. One is how do you be more proactive in terms of understanding the needs of your businesses or your customers or your clients, and how do you proactively answer or address their future goals also. That's all about being possible, wherein for you to either take in the opportunities or the threats to the businesses are identified as early as possible. Take a classic example, right? Pandemic. Pandemic, even though it hit us hard in a lot of ways personally, one bright side of the pandemic is for a lot of organizations wherein digital transformation was only a should we do a digital transformation, should we not do a digital transformation, what's the use case, what's the benefit, would it give the return that we would want it to give after all the investment. Pandemic was a lesson wherein it forced all the organizations to move towards digital transformation because your processes had to be re-engineered. Your playbook in terms of how you reach out to your customers had to be re-engineered. One of the classic cases being video KYC is not a norm 3 years back. With banking coming in and being hit hard, where people couldn't even go out of their homes, but banks and a lot of financial institutions had the obligation because their targets were changing, right? It's more in terms of how many customers are you onboarding, how many clients are you onboarding. That's where a lot of tools or software or technologies came in handy. Things like DocuSign, your signatures of your documents was completely online. Your KYC or your video KYC, that ended up becoming a norm. So like that, a lot of processes underwent a change due to the pandemic, wherein it was completely online digital markets that opened up. Given it did not have people coming for you to get things started. A lot of transformations have been happening even in my world when it comes to client onboarding and so on, which I can't talk more. But in terms of managing disruptions, if your underlying ecosystem is data heavy and pro-digital, it becomes much more easy for you to have an advantage, something like pandemic season, right? It could be in terms of your controls, it could be in terms of your risk, it could be in terms of your new business processes, right? And also one other benefit, if you're more digital, gives in handy is what you call as a QRT, quick response time. That's going to be much faster for your businesses. I'll give you a classic example. This was one of my prior experiences wherein our CEO or one of the heads of the division was going to meet a very big client. Given we as a firm had multiple businesses and the potential client had multiple businesses that he had with us, only one question that the executive had from our end is, hey, I'm going to meet so-and-so prospective client. I know he already has a lot of businesses with us across different, we call it as business units. Can you give me an estimate of how much business the client has? That was a simple query, right? So wherein all the executive is asking is, for a potential client or existing client wherein we are trying to expand the market for him or expand the business for him, how much business does he have with us? This was a classic query which potentially took 2 to 3 weeks time because, like a lot of speakers alluded, it was more in terms of data being in different silos, different ERP systems, data not being managed properly, not being tagged or cataloged properly. That's where it created a problem when the executives started saying, hey, why can't this be made simpler? Why can't this be an easy exercise for us? Why are we struggling so much for you to come back for 2 weeks for a simple query in terms of our customer need to know how much business does he have with us? Those are the kind of use cases which are going to be, we call as in terms of response time, it's going to improve tremendously when we have a digital native kind of an ecosystem underlying, so that your response times are much more faster for any new query that comes up or any business challenge also that comes up. Also, when you have everything going digital and data-driven, adopting new technologies or deploying new softwares or what we call as ecosystems, it's much, much more easier. Wherein, because your underlying data ecosystem is already established, any software only needs to integrate with your existing data ecosystem, and you can drive your processes. In the current generation, we have a lot of what we call as no-code, low-code solutions coming up, or softwares coming up, right? A lot of firms are navigating towards them for one of the key reasons being here. Your time to market is much, much less. A simple software or a simple application, right? The tech team would say, hey, I need at least 3 to 4 months to build it. With some of the low-code solutions that we have been experimenting it, it's hardly a 2 to 3 week kind of an exercise. It's not even months together, and you don't need an IT team to build it. Because most of the solutions that we have seen in the low-code is a drag and drop, which a business user can do it, and you don't need a technology user to be helping them. So in such kind of scenarios, when you have your underlying data pipeline strong and digitized with clean data, having that ingested into your low-code solutions also become much more easier and seamless for us. And we have started seeing benefits in some of the things that we are currently driving, wherein it becomes much more easier for you to deploy your applications and start realizing benefits immediately. It may not be a 6 months or 1 year kind of a transformation program or an application kind of a deployment. It's much more easier. What that gives you is you tend to, if you're failing, you tend to fail fast, you tend to learn fast, and you try to reimagine in terms of, hey, is the solution or the application that I'm developing, is it fulfilling my customer needs, or is there anything needed on top of it? For you to do all these kind of solutions, data being the underlying brick makes it much more easier. And also in terms of, we spoke about data engineering, where you have different teams building data pipelines, one team building your governance, one team doing the consumption. One of the key aspects wherein you can have a unified kind of an approach is whatever transformation that you are trying to put in, have that vision clearly communicated across all your teams. As long as they understand, hey, this is a collective cause that we are working towards, take it your engineering teams or your data science teams or your front-end business users, everyone has to understand what is it that they are collectively working towards. Think of it as a piece of a puzzle, wherein someone might have at a very high level, like say like 30,000 level, oversees what's happening across everything, but the people who are contributing to it might not be aware of how their particular components are collectively helping with the vision. Have that established. If you have different teams, call them, share the vision, show them, hey, this is what we are collectively going to build, or this is what we are working towards. This is where your component comes in handy. Everyone within the puzzle are important. Without any one piece, the puzzle is not complete. Make them understand. Those are some of the ways wherein we have seen transform in terms of data silos or even silos across different teams being blurred or narrowed. In terms of everyone understanding, hey, what is it that I am doing for a particular project or for a particular initiative? And that tends to get more return, wherein you might end up reducing a lot of friction across different teams, wherein a data science or analytics team might go back to an engineering team saying, hey, whatever you have given or whatever things you are changing in your data pipeline, it's messing up with my automation. Take it from process re-engineering or analytics or data science solutions that's already in production. Have that handshake model, be more proactive within teams. That's where it's going to be much more handy for you to manage your digital transformation initiatives, wherein you end up enabling different silo teams come together, collectively work as a team, and end up realizing benefits of your transformation that you are trying to do also. And also, this is an important or a key question that comes up during a lot of business meetings is, hey, we have been putting a lot of money into it. What's the ROI of data engineering? Right? So, this is something which is really close to my heart because this gets asked in every meeting that I go to, asking for funds or tech. What's the ROI rate of it? One key component that I would add to it is more in terms of that I say back to the executives who ask is, hey, ROI, yes, agree, because at the end of the day, a company is spending money on it, but how do you measure what am I getting in return? Because data engineering as a practice, you can't show anything tangible unless it's saving costs in your hardware or some kind of a productivity where you might have like 100-member team doing your data cleanups, your manual processes that are coming down. One key other ROI aspect that I would ask or tell them is, hey, don't look at just the hard numbers that you have in front of your slide, more in terms of this is going to bring down my server costs, this is going to bring down my hardware costs, and I might not need 100 people to do what I'm currently doing. It might be done with only 20 people. Those are the tangible benefits, right? The other benefit that is what you call as intangible is more in terms of the things that's going to help from a people standpoint or from an organizational development standpoint itself, wherein it's going to create a lot of efficiencies, not just in the short term or in the mid term, in the long term also, right? So once your company or your function is more digital or data heavy, all the other aspects that you're trying to put on top of it, the execution is going to be much more faster for them. That's where you might have to convince your executives if they come back saying, hey, what's the ROI, whatever I'm trying to invest in you as part of your data engineering project, go back to that answer. That's going to help them when they see not just the output that they get immediately in terms of the tech benefits or the productivity, long-term benefits also. Ask them to focus on the outcome of it, not just immediate output of it. Also, like I said, the previous example, wherein a simple query from an executive to close like 3 weeks, those are the kind of things that could be, what do you call it, in terms of response time. It need not be even a day, it could be a click of a button. That's what I'm trying to achieve with some of the initiatives that I'm currently trying to run in my current capacity. How do you ensure the consumers of your data don't struggle for what they are trying to do for? Right? So that's one aspect. And last but not the least, from an ROI story that I would like to point out is more in terms of if you have helped someone with their data query or any kind of investigation or any kind of initiative, right? Have them talk for you. You don't have to convince every time. If you have a success story, take it in front of other groups. If you're trying to pitch a data engineering initiative, tell them, hey, look, we work with so function, this is how it has helped tremendously. This is something that you can also decode. When a peer function gets to hear from another function rather than the person who's actually doing it, the impact is much more because the trustworthiness, wherein the other functional head might be saying, hey, this has helped us in so many ways, onboarding the other function becomes much more easier for us also. Right? That's on the ROI. Given we have 10 minutes on the clock, what does the future of data engineering look like? These are more or less general themes across the board, which I fully believe in, and I've been seeing this happening across in my current space also, wherein your big data lakes, like everyone said, is going to go away. You're going to have more focused, use case driven, common and wide data, like I would call it, wherein it could be more function driven, domain driven. That's what's going to come in handy, because data lakes, like everyone said, it had its hype, slowly died down. You have data mesh coming up as a new kind of a theme. Data mesh has its own challenges. I won't say no, but that's one interesting concept to look for. But it could be wherein organizations have to try it before saying no to a data mesh. Even we as an organization are slowly pivoting towards data mesh in some of the functions. But that's where the more data hungry your AI engines or your downstream systems are, more performance is going to be impacted. So moving to something more like small and wide data being widely available is going to help in, rather than going one big bang with a dumping of your data within the lake. That's first key trend that we have been noticing. Next, your data literacy with your data quality improving across the board within an organization. You're going to see data accessibility going up, which means a lot more people who might have what we call as challenges in knowing what data is available, where, how do we access it. The literacy rate is going to go up tremendously, wherein it's going to be what we call as a data democratized solution happening. A lot of people are going to have access to your functional data, your domain data, given it's going to be governed, clean, trustworthy. Literacy across the organization is going to increase. And finally, within the data engineering as a practice, right now data engineering is a separate skill set, which wasn't existing like even 5-10 years back. You're going to have specialization within data engineering coming up. It could be with your reliability engineers, it could be with your operating data ops engineers, it could be with more in terms of your product managers, which you already see in a lot of organizations, and data architects. Right? So data engineering as a practice is going to evolve, and a lot of organizations might be in different stages of their data maturity. Based on where they are in the journey, your data engineering as a landscape or as a journey could change in terms of how is it enabling your downstream systems or your overall organization itself in terms of going towards a data-driven organization like we call it. So having said that, I'll open it up for questions, anything that you might have.